It's difficult these days to find a powerful, sleek and compact Android smartphone, as pretty much all flagships are fairly large. The HTC One Mini promises to match these vitals though, as a shrunk-down version of the much appreciated HTC One. But does it actually live to the expectations? Stay with me till the end of this video and you'll find out. On the outside, the Mini looks much like the larger one, but it's not its exact replica. A tapered piece of aluminum is used for the back, with some plastic inserts for the antennas, just like on the One. However, the metal doesn't stretch till the edges, which are instead completely covered in some glossy plastic. The result is pretty good, as the HTC One Mini is sturdy and looks beautiful, but is just not as sleek as the bigger one. Still, there's little to complain about here, but I will mention one thing. There's almost no lip around the screen that would prevent the glass from coming in contact with the surface when having the phone face down, and that means that you'll either get a protective bumper for your device, which I recommend by the way, or you might end up with a scratched screen in time despite being covered in Gorilla Glass. That aside, the One Mini fits well in hand and can be easily used single-handedly most of the time. HTC kept the home button on top of the device, and that's annoying, as the phone is quite tall and you will have a hard time getting to that button without using your other hand. Except for that, I'm really happy with this Mini. Around the sides you'll find the standard connectors and buttons, including a SIM tray and the microUSB port on the bottom, that was however stripped of the USB host and MHL video output capabilities that are offered on the larger HTC One. That's a pity. The front face of the phone looks much like what we saw on the premium Kin this spring, with the screen covering most of it, the controls placed below and the two speakers flanking all of these. But you should notice the larger bezel around the display that cuts off some more of that coolness factor. Anyway, I'm not a big fan of how HTC decided to implement the Android buttons, with their logo in the middle and only a home and back capacitive controls on the sides, but I guess you will get used to them in the end. I do however am a sucker for the screen. HTC fit a 4.3-inch display on the One Mini with a bright and vibrant LCD panel. As a result, the Mini paints lovely and natural looking colors, is quite bright and offers some of the widest viewing angles I've ever seen. On top of that, the 720p resolution is more than enough for everyday use, and everything from tiny details to fonts will look very sharp on this display. But let's go ahead and actually power on the Mini. HTC packed a Snapdragon 400 platform inside their handset, and it's something we've seen on other such devices as well, like the Samsung Galaxy S4 Mini. The processor however is clocked at 1.4 GHz and paired with only 1 GB of RAM, so at least on paper, the HTC One Mini trails its direct rival. That's shown by benchmarks as well, and if you're interested in this, you should see my other clip where I take this HTC through a couple of speed tests. In daily use though, the HTC One certainly doesn't feel underpowered. In fact, it's pretty snappy, although actually loading more complex apps like games does take a while. Once they do load though, they'll work pretty smoothly. In fact, I've put the Mini through a bunch of tasks, from the basics like browsing, taking phone calls, writing some text and listening to music, to more complex activities like playing games, and I have very little to complain about. Yes, the keyboard is rather cramped and takes some time to get used to, and yes, the phone can get annoyingly warm when running games, but that was actually expected given the metal body. Bottom point though, the Mini is fast, as you can also see from this other clip where I've compared it to the S4 Mini, the Galaxy S4 and the HTC One. But there is something I would complain about here: Sense. The One Mini comes with Android 4.2.2 pre-installed and Sense UI on top. And don't get me wrong, Sense looks really polished and performs well, but HTC changed so many things with it that it becomes confusing. And some changes are just there for change's sake and don't really benefit the user. For instance, you have to scroll between apps vertically in the app drawer, not horizontally like you might be used to. Besides that, the multitasking panel is revamped and makes it more difficult for you to kill unwanted apps. Then you only get 5 home screens, and one of them is always occupied by BlinkFeed, a news and social signals aggregator that you might like, but that cannot be disabled if you don't. And these are just some of the things bothering me. You however might be fine with Sense, in which case you won't have much to complain about. Anyway, let's move on and have a look at the cameras. There's a front-facing shooter that takes 720p recordings. It's alright for occasional video calls, but the results aren't very sharp. On the back, HTC packs their 4 ultrapixel camera on the Mini, albeit it's a slightly snipped version without the optical image stabilization. You'll mostly see that when shooting videos. As for the overall image quality, things are pretty much the same with the One Mini as they were with the One. Poor light shots are fairly good and clean, while fair light shots are decent but lack details and aren't very sharp. As for the camera interface, it's pretty much identical to what we have on the One, with the same layout, filters and tweaks, plus Zoe of course. Anyway, have a look at the following pics and videos and let me know what do you think. I for one have to admit that I'm not that impressed. I do like the speakers though. They are not as punchy as on the One, as you can hear from the next couple of sequences, but they are fairly loud and clear, definitely better than what the competition has to offer. This makes the Mini a good multimedia companion, and you'll be glad to know that the 3.5mm jack outputs high quality sound as well, especially when paired with some proper headphones and not the ones included in the pack, which are alright, but not more than that. As we get close to the end of this clip, there are some other things worth adding. For instance, the One Mini packs a notification LED, as part of the top grille, a tiny one, but better than none. Connectivity wise, the Mini supports LTE speeds, but lacks things like NFC or the Air Blaster we had on the One. And another thing that you'll certainly care about, there's only one version of the Mini available right now, with 16GB of storage, out of which about 10 are usable for your apps and content. And since this phone does not support microSD cards, 10GB of space are pretty much all you're getting, and that might not be enough for most of you. And there is one more thing you should know, the battery life isn't great. The Mini packs an 1800 mAh battery, the non-removable kind. With light to medium use, the phone will get you through the day, especially if you'll keep a close eye on your radios. With heavy use though, you'll run out of juice quicker than you'd want, so make sure you grab along an extended battery. Drawing the line though, the HTC One Mini is a very interesting handset. It's not as impressive as the premium HTC One, but that was expected. After all, you can't really fit all the features, the powerful hardware and the large enough battery inside a small body. But if you're after a more compact Android phone and don't really crave for the best features, the One Mini should be on your list. It will have to face a handful of rivals though, including the Samsung Galaxy S4 and the future iPhone 5C, and meets them with the nice looks, solid body, awesome display and speakers, good performances and an enticing price. Are this enough to compensate for the average cameras and rather poor battery life? That's for each of you to decide, so make sure to let me know in the comments below what do you think about the HTC Mini and whether you'd buy it right now. If not, what would you get instead? With that in mind, it's time to wrap this up. Thank you for watching, and as always, feel free to hit that thumbs up button, share the clip if you enjoyed it, and post your feedback and comments below. Besides that, you might want to check out my full coverage of the Mini and the whole set of comparisons on the channel. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care.